Dawn, do you count, like, the notes that you wrote yesterday, and you're going to reread those notes? Does that count as part of the hour or not?
Well, I don't. I never reread. I've never reread anything.
So you.
Never reread. During the writing of a script.
But so the notes you did yesterday, you just wrote them down, but you don't reread them.
No, I never reread them. Unless there's something,
maybe that's what
if there's something that's interesting that I know I want to carry forward, I'll put a box around it, you know, with Word, you can put a box. But I've never make it bold. I never really reread.
You never reread it because
It's so current that you remember
you're going to get, like, trapped in there. Because that's what happens to me.
Yeah.
Is I reread and I futz with it and I futz with it and I just get trapped in that stupid thing I wrote.
I don't like to reread. I do think it you can get into a swirl.
Yeah, I get
down.
into a swirl a lot.
I just try to push forward. I sometimes go back up and say, you know, who did I name that character? It's important for them all to have the same name. Or I know that usually by the end of the hour, it's kind of in your head, and you're going to visit it again in 24 hours. It doesn't really require a lot of rereading. And I try never to reread script pages. I try to get to 120. Or
So you
115.
don't reread
The
at
previous
all when
day's
you're.
work. No.
That's so smart.
That's really
Because
smart.
then,
Smart.
because I'm trying to avoid, I know how my mind works. I'm trying to avoid activating my critic.
Right.
And once your critic is activated, you're fucked. Because it's never going to be like the movie you saw last night, which has lighting and actors and music and editing. And so I never want to activate that critic about my work. So that's why I have to give myself a document that's totally free, whatever I want to say. And I'm never going to reread it, and it doesn't matter. It's not one of those diaries that I think one day, you know, I hope my daughter finds this. And I mean, I'd die if anybody I cared about read that diary, because it's not that it's hideous, it's just so small, you know, so small-minded and competitive and, you know, jealous and envious. And I have pages on Alexander Payne. Pages. And Little Miss Sunshine, that's a good week. Why do they love him and not me, or them? It took two of them to do it. I made that point in my diary.
How many times?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Lot.
Did you finally get the point?
Yeah. It is. It's just for you to be free. You don't want to activate your critic. So never reread a scene. You'll spend the next week rewriting it until it's perfect, and it's never going to be perfect.
Such good advice. This is the best advice.
I know, listen to us, we're like going, oh.
I'm very
This is
annoyed.
why I keep asking him these same questions for years and years and years. And you write an hour a day on the weekend, don't you?
Yeah. I don't like to have a day where I don't write, only because it's
like a
going to make
muscle.
it's going to make that Monday horrible. So I'll go down to 15. If it's a busy weekend, I'll say I'm going to do 15 minutes a day. But I don't like to avoid it, because what you avoid grows and grows, and it becomes something like, oh God, I got to go back to that, and I know it's horrible, and I don't like to do that. I would rather have it every day for an hour, and I will go down to half an hour if I'm having trouble. But I never interrupt the hour. Don't take phone calls. Turn the ringers off. No internet during that hour. It's simply you have to be talking on the page.
You had a question.
You did, but you answered one of them, which is about the diary. You never reread it.
No.
Oh, the other one was you. Okay, so if you're starting on page 1 and you're going to push through to page 120 or to the end of the
Whatever.
script,
I write
way
long.
down, how developed in your mind is your plot?
Well, I spend a lot of time on outlines.
Did everyone hear the question?
The question is, if I'm going to write from page 1 to 120, how developed is my plot when I do that? You know, I'm always trying to make writing easy, and so I spend a lot of time on outlines. A lot of time.
Is that part of your hour? Or
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the document that would be open. If I'm just thinking, well, maybe I'll do a story about stepbrothers and whatever, and stepsisters screwing, then I'll have an outline, and I know that in Act 1, I have to see them make love. And then I'll go back into the diary and say, well, what's going to happen? And talk to myself about it. What would be fun? What would be interesting?
Alexander Payne do?
What would Alexander Payne do? What would Alan Ball do here? They're thin. Things like that. And eventually, you get a little nugget of something. And then I can put that on My outlines usually Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. For Happy Endings, I had story outlines. I had scheme outlines. I know I had 3 schemes, so whenever I had an idea, I would put it in the document that it belonged to. And
So you had separate outlines for each of those.
for that I did.
Those
I had
themes.
3 separate outlines for those, and then it was a question of merging them together.
Did you, by any chance, can we look at those outlines?
Well,
At
yeah,
some
I brought them.
Yay!
They're not that interesting, but
Well, I'm not.
they're. It's just very simple.
I
It's
don't
what-
have that high hopes.
I'll
I'm
give it
just,
to you guys
know.
if you want to.
Cool. So we can make copies of this because, part of the fun of this class is we just wanted to make available to people somebody else's process,
Right.
basically. So we'll have
So
the same
these-
low expectations you have for
Good.
yourself.
Well,
So
knock
these are
yourselves
the.
out.
These
Some
are
of these are like my journal pages when I first started.
Oh, good.
Here's one. This is January 2nd, 2002, 2:28 p.m., second hour. This will be done at 3:30, and then I'm going to watch The Sopranos. Still haven't decided if I'm going to an AA meeting tonight. I mean, could you die? Who wants to read this shit? And I'm like, ugh. So that. Oh, something happened. Something happened with my little computer program, and I restarted the timer. But that's fine. I'm always reassuring myself. That's good. That's okay. You're all right. Just keep going. You know, so these pages will. Please. Here's something. This was the next day. I still haven't got most of the story written. A young girl comes to town. That didn't work. That's not in the final film. And starts an affair with a gay man. That's not in the film. Happy Endings. His stepsister finds out that the girl might be their child. Okay, that's the first appearance of the idea that they had a child. But that's not in the script. The girl needs money. She's going to blackmail somebody. All right, that's in. So
Is
very
this the
slowly.
journal?
This is the journal.
Oh, this is the journal.
This is the journal.
So this is just in the journal. You're fooling around.
Right, you're fooling around. Maybe that happens, maybe not. Originally in Happy Endings, Nikki, the guy that Jesse Brad, the blackmailing documentary, and Maggie were the same character. It was so fucking confusing. He was blackmailing one of them, but also their son, or I don't know, it was really confusing. So I had to split those 2 characters up. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you have time to just play around with it. Let's say Mamie lost her child years ago. Something that Gail says to Mamie makes her think, this is my daughter. Well, there is no Gail. And, but, this is what happens. You put down things that appeal, you go down false, red herrings and all that kind of stuff. So then I have an outline that's, it's really here's the outline, May 18th, 2002. This is the outline for Medium Love, and it's really complete. Once I have this, I've written the script in my head. It's all the interior, exterior. It's 12 pages, single-spaced. It's 73 scenes. It's the whole movie, and it's really close to the movie. People's names change a lot, but
So once you've completed that.
then I write the script. I do not write a single word of dialogue until the outline is done. The outline helps me because then I go through the outline, and then I do a little check mark and a date that I wrote it, when I wrote the scene. Then every day when I sit down, I have my diary to write in, and I have to write number 9 today.
What do you mean a check mark and a date?
I check mark about what day I actually wrote that. I try to
you
make
check it off.
check it off, and put the date in there to try to turn this into a process. It's not about me being an
Okay.
artist. It's
Right.
about me actually fulfilling
You're
this
just
sort
getting
of
through
getting through the outline. That's the kind of thinking I have to do. Because if I start thinking, is this good? Is this bad? Is this art? Is this as good as Alexander Payne and Alan Ball? It kills me. So then each day you start and you have something to do. You have your diary and item 9. And it makes it much easier. I don't know how people write without an outline, although I do that to get the outline. You just free associate and whatever. But I'm afraid once characters got up and started speaking, they would take me all over. I would lose. You really need a skeleton in a film. It's not a novel. You really need a structure there.
That's
So-
what happens to me a lot is and maybe it's because I have this background from the Groundlings or whatever, but sometimes when I get afraid or sometimes I just want to write a scene. I just write a scene that may not wind up being part of anything, but I'm always so afraid that I won't be able to animate these characters and have them talk and sound like real people or whatever. I don't know why. I write scenes a lot.
Everybody has to find a way that is safe for them. What I found is when I wrote scenes without an outline that I really get lost. I do sometimes write speeches in my diary of characters just to see what their voice is sounding like, not necessarily something that'll be in the script, but how they would react to something or some line of dialogue I heard someone else say at a restaurant. But it's whatever makes you afraid, whatever makes you critical, whatever makes you avoid writing are the things that you have to know about yourself and protect yourself from as a writer. So my critics scared me. An open-ended writing assignment every day scared me. The fact that I could write here for 1 hour or 12 hours. And if I wrote 10 hours one day, the next day I would be a failure if I didn't write 11. Of course. What happened to my fire? I thought I had solved the writing problem. So I try to be as stringent on how I never write more than I never. I don't think I ever have written 5 hours when the day before I said I would write 4.
And what if you, you're in the middle of writing, and you're, watching The Sopranos at 3:30, and you get what you think is a really good idea. You don't write notes, you just sort of go.
Once in a while I'll write on a little post-it something. There's a particular phrase that I want, but I don't sit down and open up the computer or get out a pad of paper and start writing. I need that the next morning. I mean, I might need the post-it to remind me of what it was, but I need something to, oh good, I had an idea. Because what you're trying to do is train yourself for the work to be happening in your subconscious while you're shopping and what could be better, eating and shopping and watching a movie, and some things are happening. If you freshen up every day your knowledge of the characters and your theme, and you have to do that if you're doing 1 hour a day, you will be in the world of your movie. Even if you think you're only in it for 10 minutes, they will be, the problems in that script or the themes or the characters or the voice or the tone will be alive in you, even if you do a half an hour a day. And then that, does some stuff, I think, while you're doing something else.
Absolutely.
It keeps it warmed up.
That what you just said is so true. It's so true and it's very valuable. There's specific questions over here.
How do you, I'm interested in how you develop your characters and how much work you do on that when you're in the development process of the script. Do you allow the characters to emerge more after you write the outline, or do you try to have this fully realized character?
No, I mean, by the time the outline is done, they are characters because they only would do certain things. For example, there's no real work to be done on the character that Lisa Kudrow plays in the actual writing of the dialogue, because every choice that she makes, which she would have to make in the outline, comes from a certain type of person. So the character work is done in the outline. But yeah, I spent a lot of time, like the very first movie I wrote, Love Field, the character that Michelle Pfeiffer played, I mean, in my head, it was Ellen Burstyn in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I find voices or actors who will never be in it, but writing for an actor is helpful because there are certain things that actor you can't imagine that actor saying. It's a self-limiting thing. Characters have to be limited. They have to be characters have to be very, very small, because when we try to make them big, we make them amorphous, and they're capable of anything, and they stop being interesting. I was watching a TV show last night called The New Adventures of Old Christine, and the character Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays is so limited. She's small-minded and petty, egocentric and dishonest, and it feels like a real character. But if she were, I keep making Sandy Bullock the bad guy, although she's not. But if Sandy Bullock were playing that, everything she says would be defensible and kind of awe from the audience. And that kind of character that you don't have an opinion about or you don't have a judgment about is just not going to be a real strong character. So I spend a lot of time in character development. I never judge my characters, but I want other people in the world that I'm writing to be able to judge them. I mean, I think every character in Happy Endings is a wonderful person with a human, who does things that maybe don't seem right, but then the more we understand them, the more we accept them. But I expect other people in the film to judge them. I expect other people in the film not to like them. And that's how it should be. So I would say I spend a lot of time in my diary and in the outline figuring out what those characters are. And my big advice to you is just don't make them capable of everything.
It sounds like you're much more focused on plot and the characters that service the plot.
Well, sometimes that happens. I think that a story is interesting because, for me, character is plot. It wouldn't happen if that character wasn't a certain way. I mean, happy endings, there would be no plot if the Mamie character wasn't so ashamed and mistrustful of the world that she never told anybody that the baby is alive. That's a character thing, but it's all the whole plot. And Nicky, the blackmailer, would never be doing this if he didn't feel as a child that his parents so must have disliked him that they went out and bought a kid, got an adopted kid. That's his whole motor. So, you know, character is very much what people do. I mean, I think that's the only thing that you can say about character. I know what your character is based on, you know, whether you're undercharged or in a restaurant, you tell the waiter or not. I went to a movie today, and there was nobody at the ticket counter, and I walked right in, and no one stopped me, and almost everything you need to know about me is I didn't tell anybody. I was like,
Well, you just did.
I got away with something. Now, what kind of person needs to get away? What's going on in that person's life? But that's my character, and you see that character in what I do.
You know,
So that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
I always think of your stuff as very character-driven. Everything does come out of character, but what you're kind of talking about is creating some structure and some boundaries for your life, for your writing, and also so that you can figure out what the hell is the story and what isn't the story.
Right.
But you're almost saying, like, I mean, you're saying a lot of things, but one of the things I'm getting from it is the idea of keeping things small and keeping things small in scale, like the amount of time I'm going to say that I'm going to work today, but also keeping it small in terms of specific and little for people, like a little detail or a little yearning that somebody has, rather than trying to go into this big expansive place where you, in a funny way, just stumble because you're trying to like include everybody.
Well, that's the kind of movie I mean, I'm not writing a thriller or I'm writing behavioral comedies. I mean, comedies of bad manners, basically,
Right.
is what I'm writing, where people you can betray somebody with not telling them something. I mean, Lisa Kudrow totally betrays this very loving, confused 16-year-old stepbrother by not telling him that the child is alive. And then she spends the rest of her life kind of feeling obliged to him, but she lies about him. And to Javier, she says, I don't have a brother. Well, I do, but he lives in another town. There's something very dark about what she does, but it's not like she picked up a gun and killed a lot of people in a bank because she was so guilty. It's just little omission. But that's the kind of thing that interests me. It may not be. You may be writing heist movies or thrillers or war movies or something with more scope, but that's not what appeals to me. I'm very small.
Even if you're writing something with a lot of scope, it helps to be super specific
It does.
with the person and find a way to make it containable.
We have to understand what the characters do. I mean, I think Mamet said the character always has to do the next logical thing for the character. That's really important, to look at your outline and say, I've got a problem with my character if what I want her to do in the plot is not logical for her. So sometimes I don't change what the plot is. I have to go back and what kind of woman would do that as the next smart thing? And so the plot and the character work towards each other, although I am very cold-blooded about plot because I believe that movies require, one of our jobs is to provide that scaffolding for the audience.
Should we take one? Yeah.
I get that you should keep moving forward, and I think that I should have a journal and separate from my outline, because I realize now that they're sort of intermingled at this point, which then I was thinking, oh, am I going to spend tomorrow extracting all this shit out of there? And
Oh, that
putting
might
it-
take up an hour, though.
Yes. I know,
That's
it's
good.
But how do you not go back? Like I mean, when you say you don't reread, which makes sense because I do get into that cyclical thing, but then on the other hand, what about rewriting? Like, you know, when you're working on the first draft of your outline, you're kind of going back and forth, aren't you? I mean, you're not constantly going to the next scene because you're thinking of stuff that you now want to do in the third scene or whatever.
No, I'm always going forward when I'm writing a script because I have a very complete outline.
But
Now,
I
when
think
I'm
you
writing
like
the
that
outline, that doesn't see. Yeah, when it's in an outline, I've gotta that's not really making sense.
Okay.
I have to I have to be familiar with my material. I'm saying I definitely try not to read the end product of anything I do, which would be a scene with dialogue. I try not to read that.
Right.
But an outline, yeah, you've got to read that outline and study it and say, does that really work? And do I have too many scenes?
And is your outline just really, really factual then? And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I don't
so
have dialogue in it
It's
usually.
just simple.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll make copies of this available for you guys so you can just
Yeah,
kind of
you'll
get a
see the
window
outlines.
into
But
his.
one of the problems about reading a script is, if you're a writer, your big fear, if you're on page 68, is that you'll never get to page 115. The distance in your mind from 0 to 120 is enormous. The distance
Yeah, tell me
between,
about it.
yeah, it's huge. It's like the biggest thing, if I can just finish. When you do get 120 pages, the difference between a bad 120 pages and an okay 120 pages is nothing. You can do it in a week. It's really nothing. It exists, and there are problems that you will see, but it exists, and you're not going to disappear. So you can fix it and play. But the anxiety that a writer carries from page 0 to 120 of a first draft is really, really big, and you're going to think better when you get the 120 pages done.
You just trust yourself more. Like, you set the whole thing up, and you just trust that, oh, well, tomorrow,
Well,
that's
I'm old.
so great.
Yeah, I've been doing this since 1976.
But you also, I mean,
So I do. I trust myself in that I know myself, and I know what fucks me up.
Right.
So I have to design ways to make sure I don't fuck myself up.
But you said this thing that I loved how you put it. I can't put it that way right now, but you said this thing about how it's our job. Like, you said one of the biggest parts of my job is to manage my feelings about what I'm
Yeah.
doing, and that is really what
Yeah.
I'm getting from everything you're saying.
You will write more if you can manage your internal climate.
That's
about
a
writing.
lot what we were talking about last week, from our vantage point, if you were here last week. And this is really a very, very welcome extension of what we were talking about.
one of the things that we were talking about last week, and somebody, we were talking about this whole idea that I know Winnie has the same issue that I have, which is my life would work if I could keep to a schedule. Whatever
Whatever
would
thing
go.
you're beating yourself up.
Whatever thing, it's usually the same things, but it's usually in a certain rotation, although I've added meditation in the last 12 years. But I think what you're saying is so true, which is, there's a whole cross-section of people here. And what he's saying will work for a few of you, and for other people it won't work.
That won't be your
And
problem.
what I love about what Don did was he found something that works for him, given who he is. And that's the challenge for all of us, is if we could say, you do this, that, touch your nose, have fresh orange juice, and then you'll write a script, we would charge a lot more money for this class.
Yeah.
But it's about...
You mean if we had a
if we had a foolproof formula that you could all
Right.
follow,
There's-
and then it
it's
would
not about
go.
that. Yeah.
No, it's
But
not.
but
it's not
part
that
of this it really comes out of what you were asking him, is like I just feel like if I could just look hard enough at Dawn, then I could do that. It would work for me. Or if I could have.
And I'll be looking at Alexander Payne.
And you'll be looking at Alexander Payne, and somebody else will be
Wow.
looking at me, and somebody else will be looking at Winnie, and we'll all be looking at someone else. But I think that hopefully what everybody out of this will get is, and we've got much more time with Dawn, but I love that the point of it is this self-knowledge and experimenting with yourself, being honest with yourself about who you are, being honest with yourself about what your struggle is, and experimenting with some way that's going to work for you. But, yes.
Yeah, back on the managing of feelings thing, do you have any advice on like the fear of rejection being a big block toward writing? Just having to call those agents, who always want the connections and all. It's hard.
Well, yeah. I mean, is there any other fear besides the fear of rejection? I don't even know if there. What are the other ones? It's all the same.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
No, that's it.
I think
If
that
your mom doesn't love you, you're fucked, and that's where you learn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then you become a writer.
And then you
so
become
then
a writer,
You can
and
be acting out that
I
same
think
thing.
the thing that goes without saying is that you have to have a rock bottom belief that you have something important to say that's worth saying, even if it's worth saying only to you. You have to have that belief. And then you look at the world, and there are very few people who will be saying to you, you must get that out of you. No one will say. I mean, I haven't found one. Maybe my agent when he needs a new pool. But no one is going to tell you, you need to write. You need to write. So that's your responsibility. In the universe, needed protection. It needed strategies that only I could come up with to make that happen. You're the only one who can make yourself, who can make that desk or that hour a safe place for you. And that's, you got to do that. If you're afraid of rejection, I don't know what specifically you're afraid of. Like, maybe I'll write this and no one will read it. I have a lot of scripts in the drawer that no one will read. But I am very careful to write something that I want to see. And that is sometimes enough for me to get by. And if I had sat you down and said, really the first script that I want to direct will be about a pregnant, homophobic Southern girl who steals somebody's ashes, and I mean, no one would say, go write that. Nobody would say that. I wanted to see it. So my deal with myself was I want to write it and see what happens. So I try to keep as many people out of the writing room as I can, and that includes agents, and that includes, do not take the trade. Well, I can't be trusted with the trades, because the trades is just like a newspaper, the title of which is People Who Are Doing Better Than You.
The day I stopped reading the trades
Yeah, that was a good day.
was years ago. There was a front page article that was a blatant lie about someone I knew. It was just like a deal that someone wanted to happen and put out a press release, and I knew for a fact it was not true. And then next to it was an article that made me feel really bad about myself in comparison, and I thought, you can't be trusted.
No,
You know this is a lie, but yet you're going to believe that. You
Really?
can't be reading the trades anymore.
You made a parenting decision.
I made a
about
parenting decision
you,
that I
the
don't
writer.
read the trades anymore.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think you have to make a lot of parenting decisions when you're a writer. You've got to keep that flame going. Your job, besides writing, is making it okay for you to write, making it safe for you to write, encouraging yourself to write, eliminating voices, dangers. That's why I never would show anybody a work in progress, and I never have in my entire
And
life.
you don't really like to talk
No,
about the work in
never
progress
tell
either.
an idea of what I'm doing ahead of
Even
Ah,
to
'cause-
your boyfriend?
No, he's the first one who reads it, but I never tell him what the subject is. And it's not because people aren't helpful. It's because I can't handle it. When I was first here in Hollywood, I had an idea for a script, and I told somebody at a party, and he said, oh, I wouldn't do a script like with English accents. I mean, the language is so important, you're never going to hear that properly.
People are always gonna
Never,
say stuff.
never did it. I couldn't do it. Now, that's me. You may have a set of balls. I don't. So I was like, no, I'm never going to tell anybody an idea again, ever, because I'm too easily discouraged, and I know myself. So you got to figure out, make a list of the things that have fucked you up, and eliminate them.
You
Try
have
to work
mentioned
around them.
everything on my list.
I wanted to just say one thing because I'm thinking about it, and then we'll take a couple more questions, and we'll have a break, and we'll make sure to have plenty of time for your questions after the break. But since you read your journal where it mentioned, should I go to an AA meeting tonight, wasn't part of the idea for the kitchen timer kind of out of that? I think you told me once that it was...
Well, my AA sponsor, when I first got sober in 1982, said I was having trouble writing, and he said, well, he really just said, well, just do an hour a day. Just do an hour a day and
But it's
see where you
that
are.
idea of
That
one day
idea
at a
of
time
one
and
day
looking
at a
for a
time,
small success for yourself.
Exactly. One day at a time, all you have to do. That's a lot about AA is like, all you have to do is not drink. And you can be an incredible fuck up and a horrible person and actually President of the United States. But you do not, as long as you don't drink, you're fine. And so that's the kind of thing. As long as I sit my ass in that chair and the clock goes from 10:10 to 11:10, I don't have to do anything but sit there. I reduced my job, which before was astonish the world, bring the masses to tears, make your parents happy and sorry. Somehow really sorry. That's what was my job every day. Going into my office. Stun, astound, move to tears. It's too much. It's too much for a little gay boy with a dream. So instead I had to make it the smallest, and I know, without doing a thing, the clock will move from 11 to 12. And all I have to do is sit there. And I know now, because I've done it, how much better I will feel at 12:01 than I do at 10:59. So that's just how it worked for me. And maybe you don't have those demons.
This is right about that. Do you schedule what time you're going to do the hour the day before? Do you have a consistent time, or do you just feel like, oh, I'll find an hour?
Well, if it's an hour, I'm pretty free. If it's 2 hours, I've got to start thinking about when those 2 hours are going to be. A great way to see how well this works is to say you're going to do an hour on Tuesday, and then don't do it until 4 o'clock, and then the next day do an hour at 10 o'clock and ask yourself which day you enjoyed more, and I guarantee you will enjoy the hour in the morning day. The hour in the morning, you're done at noon. What's at the Grove? I'm hungry. The hour until that you don't write until 4 o'clock. For me, that's just how I am. Hate it. Hate you. Hate
One time
people who know you.
I literally, I was like, this was one of the times I decided I was going to do the kitchen timer thing. It was like 11 to 12 at night. Okay.
No, that's a bad day.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
So, I love this movie.
Thank you.
And everything about it. I love the dialogue. I love the casting. I love the way it's shot. And I love the ending. And I was hoping you'd say something about that redemptive ending. If you knew what drove you to get there, because I look at the whole piece as engineered to bring us to a happiness we never thought we'd get.
Well, thank you. This is Audrey Wells, my friend,
Audrey
and she's
Wells,
going to speak.
who's going to be speaking in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? 2 weeks.
But she did not like the movie because she's my friend. She liked it
She
because
came here to hear Don Roos speak.
she
So
recognizes
cool.
quality. I think that's the thing I want to say most about Audrey is her eye, her taste. The hardest things in the film. Now, Maggie Gyllenhaal is a blackmailer in the movie, but she's young. She's young, and you forgive a lot, I think, from someone who's full of life and charming, and she falls in love with Tom Arnold. You forgive somebody who can see past Tom Arnold and see the heart inside. That didn't come out right. I love Tom Arnold. But, she thought he would be a mark, somebody that she could steal money for, not worth her attention, and she was able to see who's inside him. The most loving man in the whole film is Tom Arnold. But Lisa is a tough nut to crack. She does something really profoundly, I think, wrong in not telling the father of the child that the child lives. And she's very hidden in her life. She has sex with Javier because it makes her feel special. She never confronts who she is, and she continues to hurt people by playing out her game of who she is, or by making herself feel more comfortable somehow. And I thought it would be fun if we cared about her at the end, because she's a tough nut to crack. So that was the first reason. I wanted her to be, since she does the big sin, if you want, I was raised Catholic, and as much as I don't judge my characters, I do have an opinion of that. I understand why she did it, but I thought it was a tough move. If you're doing a movie about redemption and forgiveness, then you got to pick the one who really fucks up. You can't have the end of the movie be about the person who told a fib. So she was going to have the ending, and she suffers a lot in the film towards the end. A lot of her illusions come crashing down, and because she had the most really to protect, it hurts her the most. And she's the thing she loses the most, I think, is when Steve Coogan comes back to her house and he closes the door on her, which is not how the movie started. She walked through his open door, but now he knows her and he closes the door on her. And I think she's really, really hurt. And then she sees the child she gave up, and not only that, he loved the play. That I remember reading the West Side Story plot. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this must blow. And then I see the movie, I'm like, oh. So when you look at a story is not a thing of beauty. A story is a skeleton, it's an engine, it's scaffolding. It is not going to make you want to move in, you know, or go to bed with it. When you see somebody with flesh on their bones, then that's something else. So when you talk about stories, it's, you know, you're permitted to be very cold-blooded about it. As a writer, say, you know what, I don't think this character is, often with me, I don't think they're going to like this character too much. I better fuck her up early on. She better have a stillborn baby, or her husband better leave her in Act 1, or a kid has to drown in her swimming pool. Then she can do all these other things because the audience will be sorry for her. It's that kind of cold-blooded thing that as you get more experience, you start to see can work for you. That's why the bad version of this is every every cop movie. First of all, you have to have a black partner who's like salt of the earth. But then you, the hero, you're white. But strangely, on your last case, your partner got killed. You kind of blame yourself. I mean, they all start that way. You're trying to
And
get
you're in big
instant.
trouble if your partner's about to retire.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to create instant sympathy for you. Why should I pay attention to this guy? Oh, he has a tragic story, and even if he's punching up somebody, I really know the bad version is that he thought his partner died because of something he did. I mean, if you start to analyze it all, it's all really unattractive. You just got to get over that. An outline is never really a thing of beauty, and you can see all the moves that happen. But that's we need to use outlines, or we need to have plots. They just don't make very good. In and of themselves, they're not movies.
Let us take a 10-minute break so we can get all the extra enjoyment out of Don Roos, and we'll get to all your questions in the second half.